Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Musings. My name is Dave Nixon. I have Mr. Nick Shaw from Renaissance Periodisation on the podcast today. Nick, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Now, before we get started we're going to talk a bit more about mindset in nutrition and nutrition with performance and how that's all linked. As I mentioned just before the podcast started, obviously Rich Froning decided to get even more jacked with RP recently. And so I think that'll be somewhat interesting to go into. But first, for those that are listening that don't know about RP, Renaissance Periodization, and Nick Shaw himself, can you give me a bit more of a background, how it came to be and where it came from and where you came from?
Yeah, totally. So the idea of RP started, I don't know, way back in like maybe 2010 or so. Just me and my buddy, Dr. Mike, co-founder of RP. We really just wanted to take really smart people with PhDs in sport physiology, sport performance, nutrition, all that good stuff, and combine it with sort of elite athletics, because it was always kind of like one or the other. It'd be like book smarts versus the kind of stereotypical meathead or something like that, and we really wanted to combine the best of both worlds. And so, I mean, that's kind of how it originally started, and here we are in 2018. I want to say we have 19 PhDs on staff as coaches. I think 6 are registered dietitians, and a lot of them are elite level athletes, whether it's jiu-jitsu or strongman or powerlifting, you name it. So it's been really cool. Super smart people, much smarter than myself, ironically. So. We sell online diet and training programs. So probably most well known through Instagram at RP Strength, and we sell ebooks, cookbooks, sell diet templates, probably what we're best known for, and it's kind of like a do-it-yourself coaching program. So instead of having to pay a bunch of money for one-on-one coaching, you get this template that kind of lays out everything for you, and you just kind of go through it yourself. And those have kind of really exploded since we released them a little over 3 years ago. So that's probably what we're best known for. And then we have one-on-one coaching with the PhDs and all that good stuff.
Right. Yep. Fantastic. So you said you released them just a little over 3 years ago, the templates.
Yeah, it seems pretty crazy. It was February 2015.
That is very crazy, because I was with you in 2016, I think it was. So they had only been out for a year at that stage, and you'd already featured on Forbes.com as a sort of an emerging influence in the fitness industry at that stage.
Yeah, man, that was probably, that was 2 years ago. Yeah, I think the article came out in like spring of 2016. So yeah, man, time flies, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting when I talk to people about RP, and obviously I've got my business here in Canberra, Australia, and I'll talk to people about nutrition, and in that conversation I kind of figure out where they're at with it. Do they know what a protein is, or do they have no idea what a protein is, which is fine. At some point, none of us knew what a protein was, so to speak. And then if they're like, well, yeah, I want to have some sort of more of a plan or a diet template or something like that, I'm like, okay. And I point them in the direction of RP. And that sometimes they'll often be a little bit confused of like, why are you pointing me in the direction of this American company that I'm like, why don't you use someone local? And it's just like, I say to them every time, I'm like, look, I'll email Nick at 10 o'clock before I go to bed, and I'll wake up with an email. And this is a guy that has sold. How many templates have you guys sold?
Good number. So the exact number. Yeah, probably in like the 6-figure range, I think.
Yeah. My point there being is like, one of the things that I think RP has done very well, and from my perspective, is that they've gone to the science of it all, and having 19 PhDs on staff is one of the examples. I think you're doing some stuff with Michigan University at the moment as well. Is that correct?
So University of Michigan is my alma mater. It's where I went to school. It's actually where Dr. Mike went. That's where we first met originally. He got me into lifting there. So we set up a scholarship there. So it's for kinesiology students. So, Dr. Mike and I were both kinesiology students, undergrad there. And we have a scholarship set up. I think we've awarded 2 scholarships so far, and then probably next fall there'll be 2 more. So it's something, pretty cool. It's kind of, so Mike and I basically had to work like 3 or 4 jobs always throughout college to help pay for it and get through. And so the idea that we can kind of give back a little bit through that and help kids, pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome. Yep, very good. And so the thing that with RP overall, obviously with all that happening, it's like the systems that show how professional the brand is with professional information, I think has been done exceptionally well. Especially the fact that it's like you kind of choose the level that you want to participate at, whether it's a healthy eating template, the RP template, or one-on-one coaching. And so it's interesting that, yeah, from my perspective, other people do it very well as well. It's just, I suppose you've got to choose your flavor, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. It's, you know, something for everyone. So if you don't know that much about nutrition, well, you don't want to dive in to something that's complicated based on timing and like how hard you work out. You want something more basic and simpler. And because if you're just starting out, simple is really the way to go. And I think that's why some really popular diets have been so popular, because it's pretty simple. So you take something like, you know, paleo or Whole30, and they just say like, hey, don't eat this stuff. That's just a really good, easy start for a lot of people, because it breaks it down and you don't really have to think or track or anything like that. But it's just like, hey, here's a, you know, list of foods. Don't eat them. Really, anything else, you're probably good to go, but don't eat, you know, X, Y, Z. So it's just pretty simple for people to wrap their mind around. And when they start to move up the ladder a little bit, you know, after they do that stuff for a while, they want to start to get a little bit more precise. Well, that's where, you know, something like a template comes into play.
Yep. Fantastic. Now, if people wanted to find out more, rather than waiting to the end of the podcast, people want to find out more about RP, where's the best place to go?
Probably Instagram, man. RP Strengths, RP_transformations. That's our transformation page with, you know, like a couple thousand.
You have over 2,000 transformations on there.
Yeah, man, it's really crazy because like people, it's like this positive feedback loop, right? So people kind of see that, and then they start, and then they will share their success, and like it just keeps building and building upon itself. So it's kind of like this, you know, just getting exponential. So it's crazy. I mean, it's really cool though, because, you know, literally if you were ever struggling for motivation, man, you go there and just read some stories. It's like impossible not to be motivated.
That's the key there though, right? You go there and the pictures are the picture will pull you in, like Instagram is. It's a very visual platform, but the stories, and that's one other thing, is like you've got, I don't know how many characters on Instagram, but you've got fuck all characters to be able to like tell a story. It's like, yeah. So when you've got both the literal transformation of seeing someone physically change, but then you hear a small snippet of a story and going, there's more to it than, hey, look, I've lost 12 kilos. It actually goes, well, hang on a sec, there's more to health and fitness than a before and after photo.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a big part of it too, because it's like, hey, you know, here's my story, and I have 3 kids, or, you know, I'm working overnight shifts and this, and I still find a way to make it to the gym for, you know, an hour a day. And it's not these people that train for a living, although, you know, we do have a lot of those and some cool stories like that. But it's like, you know, it's just everyday people wanting to get leaner, get healthier, all that good stuff. It's not, you know, just these elite people that, you know, don't have day jobs or anything like that. And a lot of people, you know, relate to that more than they do, you know, someone like Rich. I mean, Rich is super awesome dude and all that, but, you know, he's, you know, trains like 5 hours a day. So, you know, not too many people can relate to that.
Well, you know, it becomes a full-time job, right?
It literally is his full-time job. Yeah.
It's interesting. And we just had regionals, the CrossFit regionals here in Canberra at the same weekend, actually. That was in Sydney, and in Melbourne, they had GPC powerlifting nationals. So it was a very, there was a lot of weight moved, I think, this weekend, basically. But the interesting thing about even regionals level athletes now, I mean, that was probably games level if you go back 6 years ago. And the interesting thing about it, it's like people, you know, see that, and there's a lot of people watching, they go, I want to get here. It's like, you may want the outcome, but what you got to look at is you got to say you want the process, right? Because it's easy to see and not also feel the discomfort that those people go through on the day. You see the elation of the hands up afterwards, or, you know, the post on social media afterwards, but it's like, no. It's when there's no cameras. You got to want all that work. And that's one of the things I think people aren't prepared to put their hand up for a lot of the time.
Yeah, man. Not only does that apply to regionals level people like that, and that's something I think about all the time in terms of successful business. You know, people want to, you know, this quick fix. They want to make, you know, X number of dollars overnight. But I mean, you got to think about all the hours you're up late, you know, doing whatever it takes, to get your business started, all that stuff. The same applies to even if you want to get leaner in terms of diet. Yeah, everyone wants those abs. Are you willing to, go do the cardio, make sure you make it to the gym, not cheat on your diet, maybe even give up some social things just to make sure that you kind of stick to it, and just kind of, goes to show that everyone wants those end results. But again, you got to kind of be willing to put in the work. And like you said, man, you got to really kind of like the process along the way.
Yeah. I remember we did a podcast probably 2 years ago. And one of the things you said in that podcast, which has stayed with me, and I probably haven't used the word sacrifice as much since that actual podcast. It's like everything's a trade-off. And so often you hear people be like, all the sacrifices are made. It's like, look, if you weren't going out beforehand, it's not a sacrifice. You didn't want to go out. That's you just say it was a trade-off. And I think that was a really healthy way to frame that conversation of going, hang on a sec, if you want this, you just got to look at what you're trading and where do those two roads lead? And you got to make a decision, have the ability to have foresight, to have hindsight, and then make a decision from that process.
Dude, totally, man. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about, mindset of dieting, and maybe that was intentional or unintentional, but it's like the perfect segue into it. It's like, if you really want to diet, you got to kind of sit down. And what we like to say is, if you're going to diet, you really want to focus on it. Well, that's great. You should, obviously do that. But like, if you want to diet, make sure you're ready to diet. Don't try to be, put one foot in and one foot out and, you shake it all about, whatever. Oh man, like, yeah, you're like that.
I haven't heard you sing before. That was really good.
Yeah, well, probably the only time in my next 10 years I'll ever sing or something. But, yeah, man, I think a lot of times people struggle with this idea that they want to sort of maintain balance, but they also want these crazy results that they'll see online or, compare themselves with their friends, person at the gym, all that. And it's like, you can't do that, right? Because that person, their life's, not the same as yours. So maybe they are, have a supporting spouse at home, that's willing to help them, or, maybe they don't, right? So that makes things even harder. Maybe they have 2 kids, or, they got to take kids to school and they don't have as much time to work out. And it's like, well, if you're trying to compare yourself, that maybe you only work out 2 or 3 times a week versus someone that, has all this other stuff going on, and they can only work out, or, there's tons of different examples. Maybe someone's training every single day or something. So I think a lot of times people get caught up in all that, but really what it boils down to is make the trade-offs. Is the trade-offs worth it? And like, if you want balance, you just want to eat kind of normal and maintain, hey, that's great, right? Like, that's what we all want. It's kind of what we're after, is just, to live life, enjoy it. That's fine. But don't try to do that and, try to sacrifice and diet at the same time, because it's not going to work. And I think a lot of people try to do both and they end up getting burnt out.
It becomes a guilt loop, right? It becomes a guilt loop of I want to get this result, as opposed to I want to trust this process. That's a different conversation. But it's I want to get this result, and then it's like, but then I fell off the bandwagon, because a lot of people become so black and white that you're either on or off it, as opposed to realizing that it's like a dimmer switch. It's not the light switch of on and off. It's a dimmer, right? And your ability to be able to, depending on your life conditions, be able to go, I'm having a burger, which I somewhat planned into my week, and it's because I want to eat the burger, and I don't feel negative about eating the burger, and being able to enjoy that, and then the next day go on to eating the same breakfast you had planned.
Yeah, totally. There's a good analogy out there that's like, if you get a flat tire, right, or you like get out of your car and then punch a hole in the other 3 tires too, kind of like the same thing if you're dieting, right? So if you have one bad meal, do you just like, let's say you have one Oreo, would you just like sit down and eat the entire pack, or you just kind of like put it away and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's kind of like whatever, but now I just get back on track at a couple hours later or something. I think when you lay it out like that, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's something people struggle with all the time, and it kind of is that loop that you talked about. They'll have one bad meal or something, and they just kind of feel like defeated or something with themselves, and then one bad meal becomes a bad day, becomes 2 bad days, 3 bad days, and then it's a week, and then it's a couple weeks, and it's just like, why even trying to diet? I think something really important to say, and this is pretty obvious, no one's forced to diet, right? Dieting is a choice. So if you don't want to diet, no one's forcing you to diet, right? Like, just kind of relax, enjoy, your healthy lifestyle. I mean, for us now in America here, it's, the summer, so it's June. Kids are getting out of school. It's like 90 degrees or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe you have a bunch of parties or social gatherings or, weddings or, who knows, like maybe it's not a good time to diet, versus, I don't know, maybe the kids are going back to school and you have less obligations or something going on. Well, all right, maybe that's a really good time to diet, but, don't kind of set yourself up for failure by trying to diet in the middle of, something really stressful or lots of events and stuff going on, because, generally speaking, you want to put yourself in a good position to succeed, not to fail.
Yeah, it's really interesting having that sort of all or nothing attitude, which, I mean, a lot of people, I think most people, if they don't have it, they've gone through it at some point and then realized it just wasn't resourceful, right? And it's like, well, hang on a sec, this didn't really yield a result long term. So maybe there's a different way I can look at this. And I know for me, and I remember a conversation once again with you last time, and you said it's coming, I think it was just coming out of Christmas. And you were like, look, I was going into Christmas, I was going to go back up to my parents. I wanted to be able to eat the food there, so I just didn't put the pressure on myself to diet. It doesn't mean you blow yourself out of the water with, Krispy Kremes, but at least that way you're able to go, no, I'll have an extra serving of the lamb and the sauce.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, that was probably the last hardcore diet I ever did. I made sure that it ended in early December because I knew I was going home with my wife and 2 kids at the time, when I guess would have been 4 and 2. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew that it was going to be really stressful. Like, I'm not going to put dieting on top of that. And, 2, I wanted to be able to eat my mom's homemade cooking. Yeah. I have like holiday candy that, again, my mom makes delicious stuff. My wife does too. Like, yeah. I don't want to essentially make my life miserable by like having to diet and, give all that stuff up, because it's like, again, I planned it. So I started in whatever 8 or 10 weeks before that. And I knew that I was going to end mid-December, early December, instead of trying to go, through the holidays, which would just be, I think, silly for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how much pressure people put on themselves during that period. Just about every single Christmas, I put up the same fucking post on social media, which is, what you eat between Christmas and New Year's matters far less than what you eat between New Year's and Christmas.
Man, I want to say you probably posted that, and I think we reposted that because I saw that and I was like, man, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's 1 week, right? So there's 52 weeks in a year. That's 1 out of 52. That's what, less than 2%. Like, you gotta, build that stuff in so you can enjoy, life and friends, family, and all that stuff. Like, who wants to be dieting then? I mean, unless you're like a hardcore competitor that has something going on in early January, it's just a really bad time to try to diet. And like, again, the whole idea is maintenance and balance and all that. It's like, dude, that's perfect. That literally fits in perfect with that time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. So how often then do you find people sort of, and can you predict when you're working with somebody, excuse all the mechanics noises around me, but can you, yeah, mechanics literally next door. Can you,
I wanted to make sure like I wasn't going crazy.
Yeah, no. So, can you almost predict when you're working with somebody and they have this amount of pressure on themselves? Is it a pattern that you can see in some people, and 9 times out of 10 you find that they just stop replying to emails, or is there examples like that you see?
Yeah, I mean, after a while, so it's actually really funny too, because like the last, year and a half, I've kind of phased myself out of coaching a ton. So like I only have maybe 10 or so clients that I work with, just to kind of focus on other parts of RP. And again, like all of our coaches are way more qualified than me, so let them do the coaching and I'll focus on everything else. But yeah, you definitely notice patterns and stuff. And probably one good example that I noticed really early on was there was this girl trying to diet, and she had finals coming up, like at the end of her semester. And she was like dead set on, losing X amount of weight and needed this, all that stuff. And I was like, man, this is going to be really tough. I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? And she's like, oh yeah, have to. And like, dude, she just burned out, fizzled out hard, really bad. And so now anytime I see that, and anytime I have a client, they're like, yeah, I have finals coming up. Like, what do you think? I'm like, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. You're not dieting. Like, you can maintain, that's totally fine. But again, if that means you take a week or 2 break in there, that's fine. Or you literally plan that and we're not going to start a diet until after that period's over, because I've seen, clients try to put themselves, it's like, take really stressful periods of your life, finals, maybe you're going through a move, that's a good one, when you're moving. Dude, do you know how hard it is to move one house to another? Like, that's so hard, especially if you have kids or anything like that. And you're trying to complicate that on top of, like having to weigh and track and measure your food. Like, dude, that's silly. So usually any times like that, if people have really stressful events coming up, it's like, man, it's time to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things that I refer to a lot with people with the pressure in relation to the training. So I work with people in nutrition, as in through Nutrition 101, like we spoke about, or through an RP template, and give the support that we need. But the RP Facebook group, anyway, gives out significant amounts of support as it is anyway. So, but the biggest thing, obviously, I work with people so much on the training aspect of it. And it's like someone that comes from training like 0 training sessions, right? And they've done, they're ready, they're motivated, you know, to get started and fucking make a change. They're like 5 times a week. I'm like, how many times a week have you been training? They're like, I haven't been. You're like, great, twice a week. And they're like, will I get results? It's like, no, but you'll be here in 6 months. Well, you will get results if you've done fucking nothing, but you'll be here in 6 months, and then, you know, we won't sacrifice progression to try and get results.
Oh man, totally. I can't tell you how many people want to go to, you know, from 0 to 100 right away. And I mean, I'm probably guilty of that every now and again in like some of my own training. Like I've kind of, I mean, I still do like, you know, training a kind of bodybuilding style in my house. I have like pretty, you know, nice gym set up in my basement so I can, you know, do a lot of stuff. But I've started doing some CrossFit training too for the last few months. And actually it was like, after I went and visited Fronings gym and stuff the first time, I was like, man, I got to get kind of into this, because I'm like, you know, they're all like training and doing this stuff, and I'm just sitting there like, man, so yeah, I've been doing that, and it's like I kind of want to just get in. I just want to go, you know, full throttle. I'm like, that's not going to be a good idea. And like, I think there was one time where I actually went to a boot camp here in Charlotte that we sponsored. And, you know, it was like, you know, Randy Moss runs it, and Emily Breeze, a couple times games competitor. Like, I mean, that's not really like my cup of tea doing that type of stuff, but I was like, all right, you know, RP sponsored it, I'll go and, you know, give it a shot and all that. And, you know, like one of the things I had was like running sprints. Man, I haven't sprinted in forever. So like there I am, like trying to sprint. What happens on like the second one? So like way back in the day, I tore my hamstring, and I probably have some scar tissue in there.
I could predict this conversation.
Yeah. And like, oh man, like I pulled up, I'm like, oh man. And it wasn't terrible, but I was like, oh man, I know this isn't good. And so I couldn't quit. Like I knew that I could not walk out of that boot camp, because I was talking like trash to the owner. I'm like, oh yeah, man, I'm ready. I'm going to smoke it. Right. Like, I knew I wasn't, but I was just talking trash. And I was like, man, I can't quit. I'm like, I will hobble along. And they made it through. And like, I was like, you know, instead of sprinting, I was kind of like jogging, and like maybe wasn't like really going all out, because I knew I couldn't push it too much. But I was like, man, that was really dumb. Like, why can't I go like a 6 RP, you know, out of 10, instead of like I was trying to push it like an 8 or a 9, because I was, you know, there's tons of people, man. It's a really good boot camp. There's like 500 people there. So there's people on the left, there's right, and all these lines. I mean, I was in this line with like these people in the ROTC or something. They're in great shape, you know.
Yeah.
Like they're showing me up, and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, just don't be a dummy. Like, don't. So, you know, even I think, you know, people that do this stuff for a living are guilty of that too. So
yeah, absolutely. It's so this year has been the first year that my training hasn't been my number 1 or number 2 priority, right? And not to mention, like, it was a number 1 or number 2 priority for a while, mainly because of probably like not from a competition point of view, but maybe from like an insecure or procrastination point of view, right? But this year's probably the first year, so being back in the gym properly full time, and we closed down one of the gyms at the start of this year to sort of bring it back to 1 and then move more online in an educational space and so forth. And so running that, having my girlfriend, and then running the podcast and doing more seminars, it's like just training hasn't been there. And so I've matured enough to be able to go, oh, I could try and squeeze in it. I'm like, nah. I can't try and squeeze in squats properly in 30 minutes, warm up, squat properly, cool down. And I'm like, I know where that leads if I do that. I know, because I've done it before. I've squeezed it in, and then I pat myself on the back for just doing it no matter what. It's like, just plan it tomorrow and fit it in tomorrow, so you don't have to rush it and you're not sort of pushing this injury. And so I thoroughly believe that if they have good self-awareness, that injuries can make some of the best coaches, because they have this scope of being like, no, you want to keep lifting and moving and training and being physical for the next 40 years. So make sure you're not going to sacrifice that by trying to chase a small, I mean, no one gives a fuck what you lift, right? So someone that trying to chase some sort of
only other bros.
Yeah, exactly right. You got to be able to have that self-awareness, but I think you got to try and, you know, I think you got to strain a few hamstrings first to get that sort of ability to be like, yeah, I'm happy not to I'm happy to talk smack and then play ping pong or something rather than tear a hamstring. So you mentioned you went out and saw you went to, where's Rich located?
Cookeville, Tennessee. It's not like a super big city. It's probably about an hour east of Nashville. So for me, it was like a 5-hour drive.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And so he's probably been in and you've got a shit ton of athletes on board with RP. From, obviously you guys do a lot of work with Juggernaut as well, and Chad, and then all the athletes from there. And I continually see more and more athletes just pop up and share the RP stuff. And I'm like, Nick's doing his thing. But Rich is probably one of the biggest names, I would say.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, 4 times fittest man on earth. Yeah, it's definitely up there, man. And so the Greatest just came out with a list of like top 100 most influential people in health and fitness. And I think Rich was the highest ranking RP person on there. So it was actually really cool to see out of that list of top 100, 5 people on there were RP, clients / athletes.
Yeah. I saw Chad. I saw Maddie Rogers. It was Rich.
Meg Gallagher, aka Meg Squats.
Yeah, Meg. Yeah. Oh, she's an RP athlete as well. Yeah, of course she is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bob Harper was another one.
Yep.
Real good dude.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Chad was on there. And I feel like
I think it's just because of his blue eyes, really.
I mean, dude. Also, so did you? So he's gotten into jiu-jitsu lately. He just had a video the other day where he was like, rolling, competing against another guy. Man, I felt bad for the guy. It looked like he was going to rip his arm right off. Could you imagine? Yeah. I mean, Chad's 6'5", like 350 pounds. Like, not only that, and not only is he that big, but he's like literally the strongest people of all time. Like, I can't imagine, trying to grapple with someone like that.
He should just make sure that when he's wrestling, he can just whisper into people's ears. That's that would give him either dreams or nightmares. I'm not sure which one. I don't mind either.
Yeah, some of both. Yes. Yeah, it looked like, dude, I felt bad for the guy. I was like, oh my gosh, you're gonna rip that guy's arm out of his socket.
Yeah. No, Chad's a really nice guy. He's when I met him the first time, I had no idea how to take him because he was sort of like he's Chad, right? He's very quiet as well. And the second time, he was like really just polite. He's like, "Hey, Dave, good to see you again." I was like,
he's super nice, super polite.
Yeah. And then caught up with him when he was in Canberra earlier this year. So, he's a funny dude. So, talking back on with Rich, let alone in powerlifting as well, I suppose. And this is some of the conversations that I have with people in relation to, I have a lot around the training or the mindset where that goes into performance-based stuff, right? But when it comes to nutrition, what you've seen and observed with some of the highest level athletes, like what's the difference between your top 10 games and your top 10 regionals? Like, what do you see the difference in that?
So I can give kind of a theoretical answer, and then I can give something that I've actually seen kind of in sort of practice.
Sure.
I'm actually surprised at what happens when you try to use some of these minor detailed type stuff, like really get into the fine tuning of nutrient timing and like supplements and food quality. I'm actually really surprised with a lot of these high level people that it's really hard to get them to stick to it and adhere to it in general. And I think some of that is like just kind of CrossFit in general, like you can't eat sort of, sugar or something like that. But like at that level, sugar offers some distinct advantages for performance.
Right.
And trying to convince people to do that is really tough. So you have to go in with a mindset that here's XYZ from sort of in theory, what will be the absolute best to give you the optimum results. But you have to be willing to tweak and modify that to get people to stick to the diet in the first place. Because I've written what I thought were like these super incredible advanced diets. I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm like patting myself on the back. I'm like, this is your best work ever, Nick. This is your best work ever. And you give it to them and they're like, I can't do this. They're like, nope. I'm like, and I want to be like, you are one of the top 5-10 people in the entire world. Like, this is the difference between you and the person next to you, between making podium or not, or like winning the games versus not. I'm like, don't you want to take advantage of those small details? And they're just like, eh. So, I mean, that was something that kind of, just a little bit of a mindset sort of shift, because at RP, we're all about like focusing on the details and, doing whatever it takes to kind of get that little, extra boost, whether it's nutrient timing or using specific, supplements around training, all that stuff. And like, you got to just be willing to kind of tweak some of that stuff. Now, Rich is a little bit different because he wasn't really eating as much, or probably, a lot of the timing stuff that he should have been doing. So now he's just eating a lot more in general. And, he's doing the workout carb and stuff around training. And I think we actually just posted a video yesterday where he basically was just like, yeah, I just feel better overall. It's like I have more energy to train. I feel like I'm recovering better because he's eating more. And one of the big things that they weren't doing, again, this guy trains basically all day long, every single day. It's like he would sort of eat breakfast and he wouldn't really eat until he kind of like got, home for the day, like basically at night, like maybe he'd snack a little bit throughout the day. Now he's having a meal between training sessions. He's, having carbs and stuff in each training session. So again, it's like protein and carbs for the first session, eat between sessions, and he's doing that again at night. And then he's probably eating a couple times at night as well. So for him, it's really cool to see, man. He's really, he said it himself too. He's probably, like 80 or 90%. And it's one of those things, like if you can kind of go from not doing something to, you're 80, 90% dialed in, that's going to make a big difference. It doesn't have to be 100%. And that's probably been the biggest thing for me that I've had to kind of shift my mindset on. Because, way back in the day, I was like hardcore bodybuilding, and I was like, I would do anything that, hey, this diet says I need to eat at 9:03. Well, guess what? At 9:03, I was eating. If it was 9:04, no, that wasn't going to cut it. So like that was kind of a mindset shift for me, was being able to kind of accommodate sort of personal preferences and making sure people can actually stick to the diet, because above all else, you want consistency and adherence.
Yeah. That's good. It's good. I think a lot of people see a diet and it's just like, and I know this from my own experience, and not just from a diet. It's like, okay, well, let me shift it into like a business sense. It's like, I'll write a list of things I need to do tomorrow. And I look at that, I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I'm going to do all that. I don't know. And it's just like, but then I took the pressure off, and it's like, if I get 80 to 90% of this done, that's somewhat of a successful day. And it started to shift. And over the week, I got more done than putting my pressure to get 100, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the amount of time that people think that this diet has to be all or nothing. Or what's the point of doing it? And it's like, oh, there's plenty of points.
No, that's really good, man. Yeah, and I think that's something I've experienced before with some of these higher level athletes. So, yeah, it's kind of that mindset. They're like, well, if I can't be 100%, then why am I even doing it? I'll just keep doing whatever I'm doing. So it's kind of like take it gradual steps. It's like, all right, well, hey, do you take workout carbs? Are you drinking anything, eating anything during your training sessions if you're in the gym 4 or 5 hours a day? And they're like, oh, no, not really. Or, maybe I eat a banana or something. I'm like, okay. So step number 1, this is really easy. Let's get you some workout carbs. Let's get you a little bit of protein. You drink that kind of around training. And again, like that's a really simple, easy step. Mm-hmm. They start doing that. And like, oh, hey, like I have more energy in training. Like, I'm not quite as sore the next day or something like that. And it's like, just kind of ease into things and don't kind of, we talked about it before, right? Don't go from 0 to 100, because it's funny, man, because you think these high level athletes, like, they're just like robots, they're machines, they'll just do whatever. And for a lot of times in terms of training, that's right. But you got to remember, like, these people are human beings too. You can't just like throw everything at them. It's like, you got to set them up for success.
Yeah.
It goes back to all that ties in.
Yeah. It's the incremental changes and adjusting for life conditions as a continually like almost like a living organism, as opposed to this, picture of exactly what you should be doing no matter what's happening with your children or with work or whatever. It's like, you got to be able to have that flexibility.
Yeah, I actually have a really good story and it fits in perfectly with that. So I actually remember I like wrote Rich's diet out. I was like kind of nervous sending it. I'm like, man, I wonder what he's going to think. And I get a text the next day. I sent it like, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. I get a text the next day from him and he's saying, man, I really get to eat all this? And I was like, oh man, I'm like, did I mess something up? It's like, no. And it was really cool because his whole thought process was, all right, it ties in perfectly, man. he said, I'm just going to focus on breakfast. Let me get that meal down, make sure I got that nailed in.
Yeah.
And he's like, kind of moved to, the lunchtime meal. I'm like, the intro workout shakes are pretty easy to do, so that wasn't a big deal. But he's like, let me make sure breakfast is dialed in first. After a week or so, he's like, yeah, that's good, man. So he's like, now I'm really focusing on that, sort of in between workout meal. Got that. And it's like he took it kind of 1 week at a time like that. And, now he's 80-90%, pretty much all the time. But he also, what I really think is interesting is, so we started, I think, right before the Open this year. But so I don't know if you saw on Instagram, I don't know if you follow him or whatever, but so they just got a third kid.
Right.
And it kind of popped up and happened like unexpectedly. They have the story online so people can kind of go read it, but, through, adoption and stuff. So that like kind of fell in their lap, so to speak. It's like, I can't imagine trying to do that. And he's already got 2 kids. I want to say his daughter's like 3 or 4. I forget, right around there. They got like a 1-year-old, and then you get a newborn. I have 2 small kids. I know what that's like. I can't imagine 3. It's like, I think it actually gets exponentially harder when you have kids like that. So you throw in a third.
Yeah, I got told by a friend, it's like you have 1 kid, and then you don't have 2 kids, you have 3 kids. And then when you have 3 kids, you don't have 3 kids, you have 5 kids.
Oh, man. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's like the Fibonacci sequence almost, as opposed to linear. So, yeah, I mean, like, you look at that, though, and that's a principle that Rich would carry across to other areas of his life, right? It's just like, cool, let me just dial in this specific skill and then I'll add to it, right? So it's like starting basic and building. And I think that's one of the things that is probably why he's so damn successful. Chances are he did that across the board with everything else that he's done in his life.
Yeah, man, he's got a great sort of system, team, all that stuff in place. I mean, Mayhem's probably the nicest CrossFit gym I've ever been in. He's got the barn at his house that's probably better than most CrossFit gyms I've ever been in. I think he even has like a home gym in his basement too. So, yeah, man, he's really dialed in. He's a really impressive guy. I've been up there twice now, and every time I've been super impressed with everyone up there. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Mate, I think that's probably the main sort of points that I had written down and we sort of wanted to cover anyway. I think a couple of things that I sort of really appreciated was how important starting simple is, right? It's something that people overlook. I think the 80-90% sort of rule is so crucial as well. And once again, something that people I see so often just like putting in it has to be 100% or not. It's like, nah, it's not true. So is there anything else that you've got on your mind or pressing that you think that's interesting to add to that at all?
No, man, I think that kind of covers it. Again, I think it's just being able to kind of be honest with yourself. And if you can't be 100%, that's okay, right? Because it's not, you don't get out of your car and punch a hole in your other 3 tires. If you get a flat, you just kind of keep moving forward and patch it up and just keep moving forward. Yeah. Just kind of do whatever it takes. Just keep moving forward.
I heard the Gen Y version of that is if you get a crack in your phone, you don't smash the phone on the ground.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Now, I've got one of the questions from my members, actually Mr. John Sheridan, which is apparently Chad Wesley Smith's favorite Australian. I'm trying to work on that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I'd love to hear about the biggest mistakes you've made in business, such as in building, sorry. I'd love to hear the biggest mistake you've made in building such a wide-reaching and successful business.
Yeah, it's probably an easy one, man. Just trying to do everything myself.
Right.
This is probably in like 2015 or so when we were just kind of just taking off. Templates were still kind of new, just starting to take off, but like we didn't really need, a bunch of other help and all that stuff. And finally my wife came on to help full time. And for a lot of 2016, it was just her and I, trying to answer like all customer service stuff and do all that. And like, no joke, man, 2015, 2016, like if you asked me which way was up, down, left, right, north, south, I wouldn't have had a clue because it was like, you were just working around the clock, answering emails. Like you can't ever take a day off, because if you take a day off, you're even more buried. And so holidays, weekends, again, when I went to my parents' house in Michigan, it was like, Mom, do you have Wi-Fi? We live out in the middle of nowhere. My parents do. So it was like, Mom, like go buy this little hotspot thing, set it up in the house. Lori and I are going to need to take an hour or 2 each night to just sit down and work. Sucks. we can't play board games or something like we normally would. It sucks. Don't get me wrong, it sucks, but that's part of kind of the, sacrifice trade-offs. Like, you want to be successful or not? I mean, that's just kind of what we had to do. And, now we have really good systems and teams in place to help with all that. So it's not quite as, life or death time consuming, which is really nice. So, yeah, but that's definitely a number one mistake, man, just trying to do it all yourselves, because you will get burnt out. And after 2016, man, there's no doubt about it. I was definitely burnt out a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. That's really good self-awareness. My question then around that, excuse me. So talking about obviously those trade-offs and doing that work, leading into what you and your team, really, I understand it's you and your team that's built such a successful operation. It's like, so often people will do the work, and can you recall going through that time when you didn't know whether it was going to implode or if it was going to actually sort of balance out, so you did have more of a balance in your life, which obviously changes to life conditions. But can you remember a time where you sort of sat there and you're like, the future is unknown, it looks bright, but fuck, I have no idea,
Dude, I mean, honestly, that was 2015, right? So we actually moved from New York City down to Charlotte. My wife had a really good job at a law firm here in Charlotte. Like a really good job. Like, she was, senior level person there, and
right.
She didn't, necessarily care for it all that much. And RP was kind of just starting to take off at the time. And I remember like my mom was in town, so she was watching the kids. My wife and I had like a couple of days away, and like it was just kind of like to sit down. We're like, hey, like, do we really want to make this choice? Like, do we want to give up this kind of like guaranteed, set in stone, like very nice salary paying job? And do we want to give that up because it's a really big risk? And it's kind of the other side is unknown. And so this was September of 2015. And, it's one of those things, man. She did end up leaving and working for RP. And obviously hindsight's 2020, and things worked out very well. But yeah, you betcha, man. I was sweating, and there was a little bit of panic there. But yeah, I guess everything worked out for the better. So. Yeah.
Oh, well, kudos to you, man. I love watching the RP train just keep rolling on through, and I see it on Instagram so goddamn much as well. So, but it's the kind of brand, and I'm not just saying this to be a fucking fanboy, but it's like a brand that I'm like, good, I align with that. I like to see that. I like to see that people, because I know that they're in good hands, and it's not because it's the bro science, although Dr. Mike likes his bit of bro science. I understand that. So speaking of Dr. Mike, he's got some seminars in Australia, right?
Yeah, man. At RP, Dr. Mike, RPDRMIKE. He's got a full list of his seminars coming up in Australia, man. They're all over the place. This weekend they're going to be in Singapore, and then they're actually in a few different places down in Australia. They're in Sydney, then they're in Melbourne, maybe a couple other places. So all that information is online. So if you are listening to this and are kind of in the area, you should definitely check it out. Absolutely worthwhile. It's going to be three of my colleagues, Dr. Mike Isratel, Dr. James Hoffman, and Dr. Melissa Davis.
And what are they covering?
So Mike's probably going to be covering maybe like advanced sports nutrition stuff, probably a lot of training stuff as well. James will probably be a lot of recovery stuff. And then Melissa usually does a lot of kind of diet psychology talk.
Okay. Yep. Fantastic. Good. I'll share that in the show notes of this as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Mate, otherwise, thank you very much for jumping on the podcast. It was great to catch up with you as well.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'll finish up the recording.